right, welcome back to another Fix It Friday. I know it's been quite a bit of time between Fix It Fridays, but I'm going to get back on track here doing some videos. Today we are going to start with a NES. This one actually comes to us not reading cartridges at all, so we're going to go ahead and test it out, just make sure. I actually don't prefer to put in new pin connectors. I'm going to kind of refurbish the one that's in there if that's the issue itself. We're obviously going to get it undone anyways and just clean it out either way. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll get started by just testing it out and seeing what we got going on here. All right, so obviously we have a game that we know is working, so we'll go ahead and toss that in. This is my tester. And yeah, it's just giving me the red light here. Let's go ahead and reinsert. It actually, it's hard to tell, but it actually feels really, really loose. So yeah, this is just gonna have to be redone. It's probably not making contact with all the pins there. Yeah. All right. So first things first, let's get it unbuttoned and then we'll go from there. Cool. If you don't know, you got 6 screws on the case, and then it'll pop right off. All right, so once the 6 screws are done, flip it back over, gently just lift off the top tray there, and then now you're inside of the actual unit. And then so you have a few Phillips screws we're going to take out here just to get the metal bracket off, and then we'll get into the motherboard and then unhook it. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that next. All right, this just lifts up right here. We'll eject our disc, our cartridge. All right, and then we got a few more screws. Keep in mind, keep an idea of which screws go where here. The longer ones, I believe, are these ones that are in close. Yeah, so you could see the difference here. Right, so these were the outside one, and then this one's the inside one. It's a lot longer. So you just want to make sure you put it back in the right order, just like that. And so this guy just pulls right up out of here. Just slides right out. And it's free. All right, and you have your main motherboard here. It looks a little dirty, so we'll get this cleaned up for him, for the customer. And this thing can lift out once we get 2 screws down here removed. All right, and here's a look here. And we can take these all off. These are the easiest way to get into it. These just pop right out of here. So you can work them off. Just be real gentle about it. You never want to force anything too hard. So those are good. You're free. And you can pull this guy off. And this is your NES motherboard here. So this is the bottom, here's the top, and then your RF board's right here. So if you're having trouble with video, it's mainly in this one. The cap actually looks fine here too. Everything looks okay. We're just gonna clean it up. And then this is gonna be your connector here. So this one actually feels really, really loose. So what we're going to go ahead and do is just a refurbish on this guy. I'm going to end up cleaning all these pins, getting them bent back into place, and then putting them back in. So let me grab a, let me find a third-party one, and I'll kind of show you the difference. So when I first got into video game repair, I ended up buying a lot of things that I thought I would need. So I went ahead and just purchased a bunch of Game Boy lens cover or replacement lenses for those, lasers, battery replacements for the Game Boy games, and then a bunch of small third-party parts that I thought I would need. And a lot of those were the 72-pin connectors. And I ended up buying just a ton of these. And after using them for a few times, I kind of came to the conclusion that these really aren't the way to go. It's nice to have something that you can just drop in and then just say it's done. The only problem is these things aren't as, they're not as premium as the original ones are. The original ones they hold up really well. They just, over time, I mean, this thing is what? This thing is like 33 years old. 34 years old. So after that time, it just ends up over time just losing connection. And all you really have to do is kind of bend it back into place, clean up those pins, and you should be good to go. When you put in something like this, I actually don't have faith that this thing is going to last for 34 years or whatever. They just grip too hard. They're not as well made, I believe, as the Nintendo ones. So that's why I went from, so I actually have just a ton of these guys, but I actually don't use these ever, unless it's a really, really bad one. In that case, I will actually throw that in, but it's not my first choice. The Nintendo is really good at making parts, I believe, so I just trust in them. So the first thing we're going to do is just take it off here, and we'll just look at the pads. The pads actually look to be pretty good. On both sides. We'll go ahead and clean up all these pins here, or excuse me, pads, and we'll clean up these ones as well. And then we'll clean inside here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to pour a little bit of alcohol, some IPA here. I've got my toothbrush that I always use for this. And we're just going to go ahead and give it a nice clean inside here. And not that it's totally necessary, but we'll go ahead and do the bottom pins as well. These ones don't get any wear on them because all they do is really just sit in between the pads and that. So, but give them a nice clean. All right. And here's where it gets a little tedious. So after you're done cleaning, essentially what you're looking to do is, these are the pins that are making contact with the cartridge itself. So what you want to do is, you can tell that there's too much of a gap in between the top pins and these pins down here. So really what we're going to do is, one by one, we're going to kind of bend these back up so we get a little bit closer connection between the two. That way it gets a better bite on the actual cartridge. Because what I think is actually happening is, you can tell some of these are actually pushed down, so they're probably not making contact with the cartridge when they go in. And if all the pins aren't making contact with the right pins on the cartridge, then it's just not going to play, and it's going to give you that blink. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to try to show you, see if I can get the best angle. So I actually use this little guy. It's by Craftsman. I don't know where I got this guy. But it comes with a bunch of little picks that you can do, and these ones tend to be the handiest to do this. So I'm just going to get right in here, and we're just going to move one by one. So let me see if I can focus here. And you're just going to get right underneath it. You're going to bend it up a little bit. And once you've done one, you can move along and start doing all of them. And you really want to stay pretty close to each one, so you don't want to bend one up way more than the other one. So I'll always go through, do it once, and then I'll go through and tweak them back if I have to, tweak them back down, or bend them back up a little bit more. Once you've done this a few times, it becomes pretty easy. A lot of people think, oh man, there's so many pins in there. takes forever. But once you've done it a bunch of times, you kind of get the handle on working through them pretty quickly. And you kind of know how much space you want to give. Another trick that a lot of people like to do is boil these, which I believe pretty much does the exact same thing as what you're doing here. And I've actually had really good luck just doing it this way. Trying to get a good angle here. So here you can kind of tell all the ones I've done all these ones, so they're a lot closer, as opposed to these ones are all still kind of not making too clean of a connection in between these two. So hopefully you can kind of see that, the difference there. And we'll keep going. And then I'm going to kind of visually go through and just make some minor adjustments to the ones that I think are a little too high, a little too low, just to get them kind of even. Nothing makes me feel more like a dentist than this moment right now. All right, that looks pretty good there. So I'm just going to give it one final clean and be super gentle. All right. And I'm just going to go ahead and clean the pads off on the motherboard as well. They actually don't look bad at all. This whole motherboard actually looks really, really clean. All right, now that we've got that cleaned up and then we have the pins all cleaned up and bent back into place, let's go ahead and put it back together and then test it and just see if we've gotten it. Go ahead and just slide this into place there. And then you can actually test it just like this. All right, yeah, that was the issue there. All right, so now we got it back up. And everything looks good. It was just a disconnect from that, from those pins. So it really can be that simple. It's really not that hard or difficult to do. And like I said, I wouldn't recommend getting these. I just don't think they're worth it. These are just basically, I'm sure they're made in China. They're just real cheap. They're just not good quality, I don't think, and not as good of quality as NES was. So yeah, that's just the way I like to do it. I'm sure there's going to be people in the comments that say I should have boiled it, or I should have done this, or I should have just replaced it. We all have our ways of doing things. It's not saying that my way is better. It's just something that I prefer to do. And that's what I do when I refurbish those. So yeah. Well, cool. Let me get this all cleaned up and put back together, and yeah, we'll go from there. All right, so everything's put back together. I have it all in. I have my game tester cartridge. Let's go ahead and power it on and just test it one last time before we get going. And just like that, it pops right up. So we're all good to go on this guy. It just took refurbishing those pins to get it back into place so that all those pins were actually making connection and can actually play the game. Like I said before, this is really the way I prefer to do it. I hate putting in those Chinese knockoff 72-pin connectors. I just don't think they're going to last as long as the Nintendo ones. So yeah, this was a super easy Fix-It Friday for you. Hopefully I can jump back into things and we can start making videos. I've got a ton on the books that I really want to get done, and I've got what I feels like little time. So yeah, keep posted on my channel for more mods and repairs, and if you would give me a like and a subscribe, I definitely appreciate it. So yeah, All right, guys. Well, we will catch you guys in the next one. All right, later.